Call to order the study session for the City Council for City of Wheat Ridge, Colorado for February 1st, 2021. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We have three items on our agenda tonight. Our first item is a noise mitigation update from the Rocky Mountain Bottling Company. Our second item is updates from Sustainable Wheat Ridge. And our third item is liquor occupation tax and liquor license fee discussion. So as is our practice, we start out our meetings with an opportunity for the public to comment on any of these items. Any item that's on the agenda, you may speak before the council now and for 3 minutes. We do this on the Zoom feature in our virtual meeting, and you can find a way to raise your hand at the bottom of the screen. It says participants. We also, for the first time this evening, have been required by Zoom to have a passcode to enter the meeting. And the passcode we have displayed on the screen now, the passcode number is 294408. So if you are trying to log on to the meeting and are asked for a passcode, that is the meeting passcode number 294408. So I want to make sure that everyone has that, and we are happy to have your public comment now on any item on the agenda, item number 1, 2, or 3. So I'm going to ask Ms. Scheck, who's our manager tonight of the IT department. Thank you for being here and getting this all set up. Do we have anyone that's raised their hand in the Zoom format?
We do, Mayor. We have Rob Robinson.
Okay. Rob Robinson, we're going to bring you into the meeting, and if you would please give us your first name and your last name and spell your last name and give us your address, then you'll have 3 minutes to address the council. So please proceed.
Good evening. My name is Rob Robinson. I live in the 3rd District at 4 Hillside Drive. Later this evening, in this evening's agenda, Kayla Betzold and Marianne Schilling will update City Council on the progress and future goals of the Sustainable Wheat Ridge Committee. I'm a member of that committee, but I'm here tonight as simply a Wheat Ridge resident. I thought your discussion this evening of the Sustainable Wheat Ridge plans would be the appropriate context to hear my views on environmental sustainability in Wheat Ridge. You know, our shared experience of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic is a window into what our future will look like with the climate crisis. But every year of this crisis, we will ratchet downward to a worsening norm instead of going back to the normal as we hope we will later this year with the pandemic. Around the country and the world, others have been seriously impacted by climate warming and the resulting extreme weather and increasing health impacts from air pollution. Now the increasing climate impacts are on our doorstep here at Wheat Ridge. Top-level wildfire risks in western Jefferson County, statewide drought, and more. Even though considerable progress has been made with the Sustainable Wheat Ridge Action Plan, really, Wheat Ridge commitment to action on the climate crisis is small at one half-time position and an expense budget of $25,000. That is about 0.2% of the total budget. I strongly urge in your new strategic plan, next week's budget, and in every city council meeting that you laser focus on addressing the climate crisis in order to secure a robust future for our children and grandchildren. Further, such investments will stimulate the local economy, ensure a more secure energy system, and improve the health of Wheat Ridge citizens. And finally, I thank you for your service on the council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. Appreciate your being here tonight. Ms. Scheck, do we have other speakers tonight with their hands raised?
No, Mayor.
Okay, let me call out one more time. If you are joining us tonight on the telephone or in the Zoom format and would like to speak on any of the items on our agenda, we're happy to have you join us. Please raise your hand in the Zoom format. If you're on the telephone, unmute yourself and ask to speak, and we'll bring you into the meeting.
Mayor, we just had a caller join, so I've unmuted them in case they'd like to speak.
Okay. We'll give everybody just one more 3-second roll here. All right, looks like we've don't have any more calls from the public, so I will close our citizens' right to speak and go to our first agenda item. This is an update on the noise mitigation from Rocky Mountain Bottle Company. And Mr. Goff, do we have a presentation that you would like to introduce?
We do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll introduce it quickly, and we do have some guests on the call with us this evening. But tonight we have Tamika Mitchell and Bob Hunt and Andrew Truitt with Rocky Mountain Bottle Company. They want to provide tonight an update on their noise mitigation efforts they're making with their plant in Wheat Ridge. But first, as a bit of background, if you remember, Rocky Mountain Bottle Company installed new environmentally friendly furnace to their plant in 2018. Unfortunately, that the equipment associated with this new furnace increased the noise that was emanating from the plant into the surrounding neighborhoods, and the city has received some complaints. And council members Nasser Beck and Dozman have been meeting and speaking with the neighborhood. And I'm hoping that they're not having issues trying to get on the call. I'm not sure if Councilmember Nasser Beck, I think, was going to reach out to some of the neighborhood. Do you know if anybody was going to try to join us? Maybe they're having problems because of the password issue, or?
Hey, Patrick.
Okay.
I reached out to one of the neighbors that we had been in contact with and just let him know that this was happening tonight.
Okay.
And he didn't think he was going to be able to make it, but he was going to share the link with folks and do any follow-up. I told them that I'd be reporting back. So they've been notified, and I think everybody had dinner plans tonight.
Okay. And we can reach out after this too if need be. But so again, the city did receive some complaints about the new noise, and in response to those complaints and other noise complaints that we received throughout the city from different businesses, City Council amended the city code back in August of last year concerning the regulation of noise. And the amended code had a specific section in there dealing with industrial properties, which does include the Rocky Mountain Bottle Company plant. And that section of the code has an effective date of February 28th of this year. Rocky Mountain Bottle Company has really been working really hard and has made numerous efforts over the last year or so to mitigate some of the noise with different insulation and different methods, and they'll speak to that tonight. And they've been reaching out to the neighborhood and working with the city very cooperatively to try to get this fixed, because we do know it's an issue in the neighborhood, and Rocky Mountain Bottle understands it and the city understands it, and we want to make sure we get it corrected. So Rocky Mountain Bottle is here tonight to provide an update. They do have a new proposal. They've worked with an acoustical engineering company, and Andrew Truitt is representing that company this evening. They've engineered a noise wall that they would like to construct around part of the plant, and hopefully they believe will reduce the noise that is emanating from the plant. This solution does require an amendment to the specific development plan that is for the plant. So cities requirements require that goes through a public hearing process and approval through the Wheat Ridge Planning Commission. It's a as you'll see in a bit, it's a fairly substantial structure that they want to put in, and it cannot be approved administratively. So it's going to take a little bit longer than we expected. So staff will be asking City Council this evening for an extension of time beyond February 28th for Rocky Mountain Bottle to get that wall constructed and completed. So with that, I will turn it over to Tamika, I bet, right? You starting out?
I'm starting now.
All right, Tamika, thank you. Go ahead.
Andrew, I'm going to say I'm saving the best for last, so I'll kick it.
Very good. I'll screen share that for you here.
Awesome. Thank you for putting up the screen. So again, thanks everybody for their time. We really appreciate it today. You know, we want to go and share some information with you. So one, you kind of get an understanding of what the wall looks like. We want to, Andrew's going to kind of walk through more information around how do we know the wall will work. But first, I kind of want to take us back for anybody not familiar with how we got here. So, you know, we had this state-of-the-art sustainability solution kind of to the compliance of the EPA for our oxygen plant. And this was all around kind of clean air, our emissions of clean air. And, you know, the ramifications of that ended up being this thing called noise that I've learned so much about here in the last year. So with that, we did put out a communication back in November to the neighboring constituents, kind of just letting them know where we were in the process. Prior to that, we had done some installation, but during that time, it gave us an opportunity to really go through some sourcing to understand who really specializes in this arena of mitigating noise to such a degree to kind of get us as if the oxygen plant wasn't there. So I want to kind of take you through where we progressed since that November 20th communication to the constituents. And then Andrew's going to kind of share with you more about the wall and the process itself and kind of how the wall works. So fortunately for us, we were able to award the contract to Behrens and Associates, and they'll go more into who they are. But again, we felt this type of project really required someone that knew what they were doing as it relates to true noise mitigation and solutions. So that business was awarded back in October. Again, I talked about the community outreach letter, and we wanted to have this session today, and then post this meeting, we'll send out another communication out to the constituents just to give them kind of a recap and an update of where we are so far. In December, we did some additional installation. And really what that installation gained for us is whenever there is flow from the oxygen plant, there's this cycling up and down. And what that did was really allowed for more smoother cycling. And again, all of that matters as it relates to how people hear noise. And so it gave us an opportunity to smooth that out. And then again, some other milestones we talked about, you know, the city permit approval process will be somewhere between the May and July timeframe. I appreciate the partnership with the city. The city has worked with us closely as both sides are really trying to do all they can within the process to expedite this and be as diligent as possible. We've also got a dedicated resource at Rocky Mountain Bottle Company that this is part of just what he does as his main task in that partnership. And then again, the range of the wall installation completion between the July and September timeframe. Again, our objective is to go on the earlier end of the range. And again, that partnership there really has helped us be able to kind of just go faster than we would have in a normal state. Before I introduce Andrew, and Andrew will kind of take you through all the cool stuff that I can't really talk to that he's an expert in. Here's kind of like a 3D version of what that wall looks like, and you can see the dimensions of it. So to Patrick's point, this is no small solution. It's a pretty extensive solution, but we've got some cool features to be able to show you so that you can see what that will look like as it relates to the property. So before I pass it on to Andrew for all the cool stuff, Bob, is there anything that I missed? And did we lose
To me,
Bob?
guys. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. I just unmuted. No, please proceed.
Awesome. Okay. So with that being said, Andrew, I'm gonna pass it to you. And then at any time, if there's questions, I'll look for raised hands, and Andrew, I'll let you know if there's a raised hand as you go through the process.
Great. All right. Is everybody able to hear me okay?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Great. And you guys are able to see the presentation screen?
Yes, we are.
Very good. Okay. First and foremost, my name is Andrew Truitt. I'm a senior engineer with Barron's and Associates Environmental Noise Control. I'm going to take a little bit of time tonight to give you guys a little bit more of a status update about where we are, how we've arrived, and kind of what are the next steps. And hopefully, by the end of this, you'll have a little bit of a better understanding about some of the due diligence that's gone into arriving at this point, and some of the math and science behind the things. And I guess I'll start there. My background, I hold a master's in mechanical engineering with a focus on vibrations and acoustics. And I say that because I guess most people are frankly unaware that a company like ours exists first and foremost to specialize in noise control, let alone that there are folks that even go to school for such a thing. But that is what I went to school for and focused on, and that is what we as a company focused on. And so the company is Barron's and Associates Environmental Noise Control. We've been around for approximately 30 years. We've got offices around the country. I work out of the Longmont, Colorado office, so I'm here locally. We also have offices in Texas, Pennsylvania, several in California, and then one up in Canada. And so we do serve North America as a whole. And like I said, we've been doing this for about 30 years. And over that 30 years, we've amassed a series of services that we offer that are pretty much turnkey, and I'll kind of go into that a little bit more later. But the big point I want to make here is that we are not just a general contractor that does all sorts of different stuff, and sometimes we deal with noise. This is our core business. So this is what we do. We've been doing it for quite some time, and we serve quite a few different markets in what we do. Obviously, this being an industrial application, but we also serve oil and gas, commercial construction, things of that nature. And the services we provide covers basically from the measurement of noise to the analysis, and then also the mitigation. And so just to talk a little bit more about that process and approach and kind of where we are in that process and approach. So there are other firms out there that may simply do data collection, but they don't really do any of the analytical work. There are some firms that will then do the data collection, do some analysis, but then may sub out the solution should something need to be built to a third party. We are turnkey. So we handle the process from measurement through analysis all the way to execution, and that's what we've done for this particular project. We've been involved for quite some time now. We've been involved with evaluating some of the incremental approaches that Tamika outlined earlier, and ultimately what we decided was that, or what the data drove us towards rather, was that while those insulation measures that were taken previously did have a measurable impact, and they did help to kind of soften some of those curves and some of those peaks that you would hear, it frankly just wasn't enough. And so we needed to change our approach. And so what was previously kind of a targeted approach on the noise emitting pieces of equipment, this pipe, that pipe, this discharge valve, we decided that what we needed to do next to ratchet up the response was to take a more holistic approach. That is to say, we are now treating the entire facility holistically. We are not just treating this tank, this pipe, or this valve. We are treating the entire facility. And to put some rough numbers to it, the kind of general reduction that we were achieving prior was probably in the order of about 10 to 15% reductions. So measurable, but now we're looking at something probably in the order to 50 to 60%. So a much more significant reduction. So not only is this a much larger project, a physically larger project, but the results are anticipated to be much more substantial. At this point, we are in the, let me see, get this out of the way here. We are on the home run here and towards the last two steps. So we have decided on what our plan of action is and all the due diligence that went up to arriving at that. And at this part, we're in the submittal review process with the city. We have our due diligence, and obviously the city has theirs and has to make sure we're checking all the right boxes, submitting, reviewing, that kind of stuff. So that's what we're going through now currently. But once that's finalized, then we'll be moving on to installation. So let me show you a little bit about what we anticipate. So first, we're going to show a couple of elevation views here, and then I'll actually show some Google Earth 3D imagery. But up top is kind of an elevation profile here, and what you'll see is that the plant sits down a little bit below grade from where the neighbors to the north, and that's something that has to be taken into account here, and is effectively the key reason as to why the wall is so high. In a previous slide, you may have noticed that we're talking about roughly 400 linear feet of wall, so it's pretty substantial. And the height is about 40 feet tall, so it's a pretty imposing wall. But that's important in order to, one, account for that elevation difference between where the plant is and then where the folks to the north are, and then also to account for the height of the equipment as well. So both from an acoustical aspect, but we're also addressing some of the visual aspects of this as well. Below, you'll see a elevation profile of a rendering of the wall. And so what you'll notice here is that this is not just a sheet steel wall we're looking at. Part of this aesthetic improvement is being discussed and approved through the city, but we are basically looking at various ways to enhance the aesthetics of the wall above and beyond just being an acoustical wall. So there's not only a objective technical criteria that's being met here, but also a subjective criteria to make sure that it fits within the surrounding uses. And I'm going to switch over to Google Earth here. See if I can get out of this. And I thought this would probably be the better way to try to give everybody a context of exactly where we're talking about, what part of the plant, and kind of what this looks like. Now, this is a pretty simplistic rendering, mind you, but I think it'll get the point across. So zooming in, we've got the target.
Hey, Andrew, we can't see it. We can't see the Google Maps.
You know what? Let me try this. I'm going to stop.
I need to stop sharing this screen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to stop share and then reshare.
There you
And
go.
let's see what we can do. How about now?
It's coming up, I think. Yep.
Good to go?
You're
Perfect.
good
Thanks.
now, Andrew.
Okay, very good. All right, so we've got I-70 to the south here. Kipling's right over here. We've got the target, and then here we have the RMBC facility. It's a fairly large facility, and so what we're actually talking about is this one area right here. This is the oxygen plant that's in question, and thanks to the miracle of Google Earth, we've got some pretty up-to-date light art that shows the facility in quite a bit of detail. Gets into showing some of those elevation profiles we talked about, where things are a little bit sunken down from the neighbors, and then of course we can turn around and look at things from the profiles of the neighbors too. And so ultimately, what we're looking at, there's the facility right there, is a pretty darn substantial wall. We're going to be covering the entire north side of the facility, the entire east side, and the entire west side. So this is fully encompassing all aspects of the oxygen plant. As discussed before, without getting too technical, we were looking at targeted insulation that was targeting various vessels, various pipes, things of that nature. Now we're taking a different approach. And so this is what we call path mitigation. We're putting something physically in between the source of the noise, in this case, the plant, and then the receivers of the noise, the neighbors to the north. And so this will holistically treat all aspects of the facility simultaneously without having to take a piecemeal approach to things. And I'm going to stop screen sharing, and we're going to go back to one final slide here real quick. All right, bear with me 1 second here. There we go. All right, is everybody able to see that again?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So the last thing I want to describe real quick was how does this mitigation work and why are we looking at this? Because I think an obvious question that might be on some people's minds is, well, couldn't we have put up just a highway concrete barrier that perhaps would have been simpler and faster? And the short answer is that you could, but there's two main ways to affect the sound that we're concerned with here. One is reflection, basically redirect that sound energy in some other direction. And that's what a concrete wall would do. It wouldn't really do anything to reduce that energy. That energy would just be redirected, kind of like a pool ball hitting the bumper on a pool table. It's going to come back with maybe a little less energy than it hit the bumper with, but you're not actually getting rid of that sound. And in this case, what could occur is then the sound reflects back to the south, hits the facility itself, and then you're getting some of those second and third order reflections back to you guys to the north. And so we didn't feel that that would be a comprehensive solution for this. And so what we needed to look at then was an absorptive wall. And so when we talk about absorption, on the north and the side of the wall that faces the constituents, it's going to look like a normal wall to you. On the side that faces the facility, there's actually a perforated liner. So this is a porous wall. And there's actually a absorptive, what we call a septum cavity, that is between that porous barrier and then actually the hard backing of that wall. In that septum barrier, we basically have a series of absorptive media, and then actually, believe it or not, you can even alter the size of the porous holes and the spacing of them to tune it to a certain frequency response to the wall. So just like playing the different valves on a trumpet has a different noise, we can actually tune this wall to the certain frequencies that we're interested in dealing with. And so in that case, what happens is when that pressure wave, because that's what we're talking about here, we're talking about a pressure wave, when that kinetic energy from the pressure wave hits the wall, that energy actually transduces from a kinetic energy wave into thermal energy. It's not, you're not going to go put your hand up on this wall and it's not going to be hot to the touch, but you are actually transducing the energy from one form to another, and then allowing that to dissipate in the wall. It's not perfectly absorptive, so there will be maybe 5% will be reflected back to the south, but obviously it's a heck of a lot less than a concrete wall would do, and therefore we are not just redirecting the sound and making it potentially somebody else's problem, we're actually getting rid of it. Two metrics that are used in order to basically provide some unit of measure of how well a wall does these things is one, it's called the STC rating, that stands for Sound Transmission Class. And basically that's a rating for how well something blocks sound. The higher the STC rating, the better it blocks it. NRC, on the other hand, is a rating for how well something absorbs sound, how much of that energy hits and does not come back because it absorbs within the wall structure itself. And that goes from a rating of 0 to 1, with 1 basically being 100%. So ultimately, there's some real science, some real engineering behind this. There are some real metrics that we can use here that most people probably will be unaware of if this is something that you've done before. This is a very niche thing. Most people aren't even aware that there's a noise guy like myself, but just hopefully understand that there's a lot of due diligence that's being done here. We're taking a very scientific approach to this to try to make sure that it's being done correctly, and that this will be the last thing needed to push it across the finish line. And I appreciate everybody's time tonight. That's all I have.
So I'll open it up if anybody has any questions. You see why I save the best for last. He's way better than I, and I never knew people specialized in this myself, so I learned a lot.
I'll tell you what, why don't we stop sharing the screen so we can see everybody, and then we'll see if we've got questions from council. I want to thank you very much for that presentation. It was very informative, and it looks like you've done a lot of work on this. So let us open it up to questions from council. Ms. Weaver.
That was fascinating. Thank you. Thank you both so much for the explanation. Will you be having a monitor on the actual wall? I mean, I'm just fascinated about the description of the instrument-like thing. So will you be able to measure in that moment, like what's being reflected back and what's being absorbed? And
There's nothing that is active in kind of the way that you're describing. Frankly, I'm not aware of anything that quite acts like that. What you're describing is certainly interesting, and in theory, you could definitely look at that. But what we will be looking at is, of course, there's the analysis on the front end, and then of course the measurement on the back end to make sure we've hit our targets. And so the aspects of that of those targets we're looking for and kind of that process is actually part of the submittal process that we're currently undergoing with the city currently. Yeah, rest assured that will be undertaken.
I was just curious because it would be fascinating to see sort of ongoing what the readings are. That I too have learned a ton about sound, as I think this has in the last couple of years, and so I was just curious, just fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Ms. Noslerback.
Thanks, Tamika and Andrew, so much. Andrew, it's great to meet you, and Tamika, it's so good to see you again. So this is so helpful in just trying to understand how the sound reduction can possibly work. My question is about how we're gauging the decibel levels that we're starting with, and how we're looking at if this is going to be a 50% to 60% reduction in noise and sound. Then how are we measuring that? Is it decibels that we're measuring? A lot of the neighbors around the area have like a decibel reading app, right? You can get it on your phone. And so if, is that going to be something that's adjusted, or is there a number that the bottling plant is going to be able to point to as that one true reading? Because there's a lot of readings out there.
Yeah, Andrew, I'll take the initial stab at it. And so here's why I was like turning flips. You guys can't see it, when we were able to award the business to Behrens and Associates. And that is because they had familiarity, kind of where RMBC was before we actually had the oxygen plant put in. So they already were kind of familiar with the framework of what it was. And throughout this solution, that has been the criteria, is that we had the capability to be where it was before the oxygen plant was put into place. So that's part of the survey modeling that Andrew and his team actually does. And again, the other benefit of them being kind of a one-stop shop, sorry to call it like that. I know you call it like the one turnkey, but really I call it a one-stop shop, to be able to take the numbers, take the pre-data, put the installation solution in, and then be responsible and accountable for ensuring that it actually achieves kind of what the desire was of the pre-state. So yes, the measurements is in dBA measurement. And so as part of our submittal to the city relative to how do you measure compliance will all be based on that. So that reduction that Andrew was talking about really took us above and beyond where we were at pre-state, which was actually great for us because we knew we definitely get what they were accustomed to prior. But yes, it will be in dBA. I anticipate after the solution is put into place, they'll probably recycle those reading equipment because they'll be happy again. And that's really our objective here.
Great. That makes sense, Mika. Thanks. And also, Bob, I didn't say hi to you, but good to see you too, Bob. Hi.
Hey.
I had another question for you. So specifically, I guess this has to do a little bit more with the timeline. When we redid this ordinance, we specifically had that February 28th date in there. And the purpose of this whole presentation tonight is how that is going to be extended. And I'm wondering, on the city side of things, Patrick, what are we able to do to help expedite? I did tell you guys that at the beginning of this meeting, I had talked to some of the neighbors in the area, and they're on board for this if it's as soon as possible. So how can we make sure that we're doing everything we can to expedite?
Sure, and we'll do everything we can as a city to keep it moving forward. I talked to staff this afternoon, and we're hoping to get this scheduled for Planning Commission in May, which was, I think, in the presentation that Tamika started out with, we were showing a range of May to July. So we're a couple months ahead already on that. And then I'll turn it over to Andrew or Tamika to talk about the schedule of how long. So if Planning Commission does approve it in May, they can pull, Rocky Mountain Bottle can pull building permits right after that, as soon as it's approved. And then I'll let Tamika speak to how long they think it could take to construct the wall.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in because I think it was important when Andrew kind of showed where we were in their process, which is really at the, once you get the clearance, you're going forward with the materials ordering and install. So Andrew, you want to kind of put some more specifics into once we get the approval from the city about that range that it will take, because ordering the materials will be fairly quick.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, you know, with wall construction, there's some site preparation that needs to be done, namely some grading. That's actually already been accomplished. So we have already done some of the preparatory work on the front end, namely the site grading, and some of that associated work in preparation for this. So we are moving forward as fast as we can on our end. Right now, as I explained earlier, you know, there's due diligence on our end, but then there's also additional due diligence and submittal checks that, of course, the city has to go through. And so we're navigating that process right now and doing so very quickly. But that process does take some time. We have ordered materials where available. We are still actually seeing some timeline issues due to COVID, as many other industries are. So we're taking those things into account. But suffice to say, the proposal and the deadlines that RMBC is committed to, we are as well. And some of the prep work has already been accomplished, and things are already on order for that.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Stites and then Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I think most of my question was just answered as far as the timeline goes. This is something you've done before in other cities or other projects, Andrew?
Yes, sir. Yeah, as a matter of fact, we actually just finished our most recent install of this similar size and scope was for a Martin Marietta concrete and asphalt processing facility in Weld County. That was a very contentious project subject of rezoning. And this was what we determined was this was needed in order to maintain compatibility with that area. And so I know Martin Marietta and RMBC actually have a relationship there. And I think that helped instill some confidence in that. I will say this is on track to be our tallest wall ever installed in Colorado. And that is, like I said, due to the height differential there. You know, with the front range winds here, wind was a huge concern. As far as structural concerns in the wall go, wind loading is the most significant structural concern, and wind loading is exponential. So building a taller and taller wall is a more expensive and engineering challenging endeavor as you go up. But we needed to hit this mark in order to hit the acoustical targets we were looking for, as well as maintain some of that visual impact. And so that was an aspect of this, is let's not just block the sound, but you know, kind of out of sight, out of mind as well. And let's deal with some of those visual aspects of it. And this, I will say, is aesthetically different, aesthetically better than what our standard product would be. Not that that's subpar by any means, but I think this is an improvement for sure.
The proposed timeline seems reasonable, or is that crunched, or is that kind of a best guess?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
The proposed timeline you have for building the wall, is that a safe estimate, or is that kind of a crunch, or as far as your time on that?
We are comfortable and confident with the timeline that RMBC is proposing. Like I said, we've been doing everything we can, where we can to you know, do prep work when that's available, and yeah, it's no pushback from our end.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just say I know the neighbors are getting tired of this being a constant issue for them. So the sooner we can get it solved, the better. So if it's the best way to do it, let's do it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Urban and then Ms. Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first question is relating to the city approvals of the aesthetics of it. And I just want to confirm that our approval process doesn't diminish or dilute the effectiveness of the application or the wall itself, and making sure that it's as effective sound-wise as opposed to visual. Because if I had to choose one over the other, I would choose the sound mitigation over the aesthetics of it. I just wanted to confirm that.
That's a fair question, Mr. Urban. I too am a function over form kind of guy. I guess you could ask my wife that. She's the designer of the house. So rest assured that the acoustical targets are of my main concern, and we're hitting that. The aesthetics are secondary to that, and that is being achieved at no cost to the acoustical objective of the wall.
Great. And then from the city perspective on the ordinance itself, would we be issuing a waiver for this particular property for the interim, or is it a delay of the ordinance overall?
Yeah, I think Mr. Dahl and I have been speaking about that, and he's got a couple options you can consider.
We can do one of two things. We can take direction from the council to defer enforcement of that particular section or sections of the ordinance that pertain here, or we can run an ordinance that would be able to go through first and second reading before February 28th that would extend the effective date of the enforcement date for those same particular sections of the ordinance that are applicable here. Either one of those two mechanisms will get there. It's not uncommon, or over the years, that every now and again the council has directed that enforcement of something be reactive as opposed to proactive, or have given direction to staff to, despite the fact that an ordinance is in place, that enforcement should be deferred while efforts are being made, reasonable and good faith efforts are being made to comply. It's a little more informal, frankly, than simply running an amendment to the ordinance, extending the enforcement effective date of a particular section or sections. Either one will get to the goal. It's more what the council is comfortable with and what perhaps their constituents are comfortable with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councilman Urban asked the question that I was going to ask about the ordinance. And so with the information that we just got from the city attorney, the position I sit is that I would prefer that we do official amendment to the ordinance to extend the enforcement and run it through a first and second reading. I think it's important that we keep our ordinances, our processes clean, and it would keep us from putting ourselves in a position later on down the road where something else is happening that someone could ask if council just defers enforcement. And so I think that I would prefer that we run an ordinance amendment, and would like to hear what the rest of council feels about that.
Ms. Nosler-Back.
I fully support that, what Councilwoman Hoppy just recommended as well. I think it's really important. We did a lot of work to make this ordinance work for everyone, and I want to make sure that we're continuing to do that, and holding everybody accountable through good process and transparent process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate everything that the Rocky Mountain Bottle Company is doing to mitigate this process and go to these great lengths. However, I think that there are maybe other businesses that would intentionally and unintentionally violate the noise ordinance and would benefit from a deferral. And so as much as I want to defer the enforcement date, is there not a way that we could isolate this particular case given the length that they've gone to, and amend the ordinance to allow a waiver of the ordinance for circumstances or allow the city manager to issue a, like, quote unquote, permit to make noise beyond the ordinance for a certain period of time, as opposed to delaying the effectiveness of the overall ordinance?
Mr. Dahl?
I can address that. I've been looking through the ordinance as this dialogue's been going on, and I believe that it's really just one subsection of the new noise ordinance that involves unlawful noise for industrial properties. And that's kind of its own self-contained subsection. I recognize that the council's legitimately concerned about unlawful noise from residential and commercial properties and other businesses, which are a separate issue in the city of concern to you. But I think we should be able, and flipping through it quickly, to target an ordinance extending the effective date and the enforcement date for that subsection. That would be the industrial section. I don't know that there are that many other businesses that would be scooped into that, if any. So I think you'd be able to do sort of a targeted delay with an ordinance and accomplish that goal. One thing I will need, or we will need when you get around to motion time, is the actual completion of construction timeframe. I think what I heard was the planning review and permission from the city to commence construction, but I haven't heard a end of construction date yet, and that would be the important date that I would need for this ordinance. So in the fullness of time, I think we'll need that from the applicant. I see there are plenty of other questions, though.
Thank you. Ms. Hulteen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given what we learned this evening from the presentation, it seems like this is an issue that, should it come up again in another industrial area, that we, if properly engineered and addressed, we'd be looking at needing extended time. So I'm in support of Councilmember Hoppy's suggestion, and would support that as an option. Thanks.
Thank you. Before I go to your question, Ms. Hoppy, I have one also for Mr. Truitt. Can you speak just a little about the architectural appearance of your wall from the street or from the exterior? What design materials and thinking are you all thinking about?
You know what? I'll actually have to defer to Tamika on that. I think I could speak generally, but she may have some more specific details. I've been so laser focused on the acoustical performance. I've left up some of those details to those better than I have that.
Okay, and I know that we'll get more details in the future, but if we had a few highlights right now, it'd be interesting to know what you're thinking about. And you're muted.
Now I'm muted. Thank you very much. So to be quite honest on that one, I know that our dedicated resource is actually working closely with, is it Ken in the city planning group, to kind of just make sure from a cosmetic and visual standpoint, it's meeting the right needs. So they are working in partnership, just making sure that we're taking into consideration all of that input that they're providing to us. So I'd be lying here to tell you that I can tell you all the bells and the whistles, but I'm working in partnership. We've been giving our team feedback, and we've been embracing that feedback to make sure it's included in that actual design. We would definitely won't put anything out there that Ken doesn't say, hey, we can't live with that. And so we're making sure we're doing that due diligence.
Right. Okay, and I will thank you very much for that clarity, and I will also for the public that's listening tonight, when this goes back through the Planning Commission, there will be a public hearing on this, so there will be opportunity to have the public input on that. Mr. Goff, did you have something?
Yeah, if I could just follow up on that point. Yeah, the wall must meet the city's architectural and site design manual, the requirements in that, because of its size, its location, proximity to and visibility to a public street. So I've been told from staff that Rocky Mountain is very cooperative and understands, and what they've presented so far to staff is meeting the design manual.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hoppy. I apologize for putting you off there, but you're recognized now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, as I remember it, the ordinance went into effect 15 days after final publication, with the exception of the industrial zoning, which was supposed to then go into effect on February 28th. So in an ordinance amendment would actually only just extend the exception of the industrial piece that was supposed to end on February 28th. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. And you read ahead and found the easy answer, because the original ordinance had contemplated that there would be a little more time for this particular section anyhow. Now we're just going to be adding time to that. So that's an easy ordinance for me to write. I'd also, from the perspective of public input, point out that since you'll be embracing an ordinance, that goes through second reading, which is a public hearing. And I would expect that the council would probably want something like this presentation to be available for the public, or elements of it, to help the public understand what is going on here as well.
Thank you. Ms. Nosler-Beck, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, you did. Good eye, Mayor. I had just one more question about the decibel level and the reading. Do we have numbers, like what a 50% decrease would be from what the current sound is?
Yeah, so all of that information is actually what's included in our permitting. So when we were participants in actually creating the language that goes along with the permitting, that coincides with the solution, the DBA levels as they were before, the DBA levels as they would be with the solution. So that hence goes back to Andrew's feedback relative to the significance of the reduction that we'll actually get, but all of that will be included in the permitting language. So you won't be measuring compliance based on anybody's perceptions. You'll be measuring compliance based on actual DBA numbers that, again, we can hold ourselves accountable to, and the city can hold us accountable to.
And are those DBA readings done from like an area, a specific distance from the neighborhood that's specifically having the issues? Is that where the readings are coming from?
Yes, and I shake my head like this because Andrew and I spent like so many hours on this. But what we do is we actually took data points from like kind of the highest point of where people would hear noise. So we put together some actual data points so that if anybody's actually enforcing this, it makes it very easy. So it's not subjective, it's not all over the place, it's not all up and down the street. You're taking it from two key high points. And then if all else fails, there's also an opportunity to take measurement at the source. So we also put that in there. So we do a receiver as primary, holding ourselves accountable to the noise level that's being picked up from the receiver level, and then also from the source. So that if, 5 years from now, I'm not here and somebody else is in position and there's new development, we can be able to differentiate that from the business of RMBC. So we were very intentional to make sure we put all of that inside of that permitting language.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tamika. And then just one last piece for you, Tamika, and Bob probably is, so for the February 2021 outreach to the community and neighborhood, can you just tell us a little bit about what the plan is for that? What you all will be doing?
Want me to go to Tamika? Yeah, I think it's going to be a condensed version of what we're talking about here, perhaps not with a lot of slides or anything like that, but certainly showing the progress that is made and the fact that, we're continuing to work, very closely with the council and city planning to ensure that we are, on target to meet the expectations that we talked about. And we'll run that past, Patrick as well and share that with you all as well.
Great. Okay. And I just don't want to let things finish up without just thanking you for all of the investment that you've put into solving this. And I hope we're on the right path. I'm feeling really optimistic. And so anyway, thank you so much. And I learned a lot, Andrew. I had no idea.
Yeah, and I just want Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think for us, that's why it was really important to bring Andrew on at this point. And, as he says, they're a unique business, and this isn't something that we've kind of touched upon within our organization either. So, it really required an expert that this is the core of their business and not just some side part of their business, but this to be the primary core of their business to ensure this time we have a solution out there and it's a solution that we can have confidence in.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hoppy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to ask for a consensus, but prior to asking for the consensus, I need to know what a realistic completion of construction date would be. So if anyone has some estimates on that, please.
So I guess I would ask this question because again, you have your approval. So Andrew, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot, if we're able to get approvals hypothetically in May or whichever month it is, how many weeks from that will we be in a completion phase?
You know what, Tamika, I hate to tell you, but unfortunately, yeah, that kind of project management aspect of the construction itself is not under my purview. What I can say is that I know that the dates that you guys have discussed with Steve, our head of our permanent structures division, he is committed to meeting those dates. And I know that, you're working obviously with the city and the staff to get through those approval processes. So the most specific I can say is we are on track, given the timelines that Steve is committed to, but I'm sorry to say that I don't know those exact details off the top of my head.
Tamika, do you want to use, I think those dates Andrew are speaking to were in your presentation.
Yeah.
Let me.
So I'll put it based on the timeline. If we were saying May, because if you look at the city permit approvals were May through July, and then taken into consideration, if it were to be approved in May, we would be looking at a completion around the July timeframe. And again, if you kind of just do the math, if the approvals is done in June, then you'll be looking at an August completion. And then if the approvals were done in July, you'd be looking at September. So we have kind of like an 8-week sliding path from the actual approval process.
Soppy?
Does that help?
Yes, thank you. And
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And also understanding from being in the construction industry for a long time, as Mayor Starker has also been, I'm going to ask for a consensus that we amend the ordinance to extend the enforcement and run it through first and second reading for the subsection of the industrial zones, and that we ask for a completion date of October 1st.
Okay, Mr. Urban?
No, I'm raising my hand as a consensus.
Okay, so so no questions on the consensus, and raise your hand, and we'll have our clerk give us a quick perusal on the hands.
It looks to me like we have a unanimous consent.
You think we've got consensus on that program? So it sounds like that you all should get going and finish up your discussions with the city and get your permits and to get out there and to build us a beautiful wall around your facility. All right. Thank you very much for coming, and we appreciate you bringing that to us, and we look forward to seeing additional work on the project. So thanks so much.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Much appreciated.
You bet. Thank you very much. Okay. We will go on to our second agenda item, which is an update from Sustainable Wheat Ridge. And I'll go again to Mr. Goff.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will turn it directly over to Kayla Betzold, and I believe there's some of our members of our Sustainable Wheat Ridge Committee on here, but Kayla's going to start.
Ms. Betzold, nice to have you with us.
Thank you. And I'll just share my screen here. Thank you. Good evening, Council, and thank you for inviting us to your meeting tonight. My name is Kayla Betzold, and I am the part-time Sustainability Coordinator with the city. I'm here tonight with the co-chairs of the Sustainable Wheat Ridge Resident Advisory Committee, Amy DePere and Joy Opp. Joy will be presenting with me tonight, and Amy will join us after the presentation for any questions that you may have for us. This is the agenda for our presentation tonight. So first, Joy will be presenting the original recommendations that the committee drafted when the action plan was completed back in 2018. Then she will be reviewing our current progress on the action plan, including highlights from multiple topic areas. And then in the second part of our presentation, I will be sharing with you some proposed sustainability strategies for you to consider ahead of your strategic planning retreat in February. With that, I will pass it over to Joy Opp, co-chair of the Sustainable Wheat Ridge Resident Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Kayla. Good evening, Council, and thank you for having us tonight. As Kayla indicated, we have an exciting agenda for you. We first wanted to start off with a reminder of where we were almost 3 years ago. When the committee was first installed, these were our recommendations in 2018. This list was pulled from the presentation after we had completed the action plan and outlines our specific recommendations for progress on sustainability goals. Diving right in, you can see that a volunteer committee has indeed made incredible progress in a short period of time. Since the action plan was completed and presented to City Council in 2018, the committee and staff have documented success in each of the 6 designated topic areas. And to date, 51% of the plan is now in motion or has already been completed. This equates to 71 of the total 139 recommendations. This grid speaks for itself, and I encourage you to review it in detail in your package. In 2019 and 2020, the partnership with Xcel Energy resulted in 767 residents and 118 businesses participating in energy efficiency programs. We graduated from the PI program in the fall of 2020 and look forward to continuing our progress toward energy efficiency goals. Over 100 residents had home energy audits. 79 are participating in the wind source renewable energy program and 75 in solar net metering. Over 2.0 gigawatt hours of electricity has been saved community-wide. This is equivalent to taking almost 1,500 cars off the road and an energy cost savings of $200,000. The committee, with a tremendous amount of help from staff, has made great progress on our communication and engagement topic area. And together, we have met 100% of our goals. The integration of sustainability messaging into city communication channels, the What's Up Wheat Ridge community engagement website, and social media platforms have been engaging forms of communication. The Sustainable Neighborhoods program, which has provided numerous additional qualitative and quantitative benefits, includes real hands-on involvement by our residents. And the city's Green Business Program will get even more traction in the coming year and involves businesses in conservation efforts. The resident survey is underway and will be sent out to the community in the spring. In 2020, several other projects gained traction and are set to continue this year. Bike racks are being awarded to area businesses, solidifying our commitment to the biking community and bike infrastructure. The Scraps Compost program, which has 74 members and has been so successful that they now offer curbside pickup service. The installation of EV chargers that we were awarded last year is scheduled to happen in 2021, and many residents are eager to learn more about owning an electric vehicle. And finally, zero waste materials will be present at many in-person events this year as soon as that is possible. 49% of the action plan remains to be addressed. Of that, 76% is policy related. A majority of the remaining goals in the action plan require policy direction from City Council. For example, a transportation goal in the plan addresses rules around bikes approaching an intersection to be consistent with state law, known as the Idaho Stop Law. This ordinance allows bicycles to yield at stop signs if conditions are safe and if that bicycle has the right of way. To continue progress on the action plan, City Council may consider addressing policy-related goals in the future. The committee is so proud of our work so far and looks forward to continuing the momentum toward these important initiatives. We are very grateful for Council's continued support. Kayla, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Joy, for the overview of the action plan. As Joy has explained, we have made some great progress on the action plan in just over 2 years. In the second part of our presentation tonight, we'd like to turn our focus to the city's strategic plan. First, we wanted to share with you the 2035 vision statement, which includes Wheat Ridge is committed to environmental stewardship, and the more specific statement that details residents have opportunities to recycle, to compost, to reduce air pollution, emissions, litter, and wastewater, and to pursue urban agriculture. Innovation on sustainability is supported and encouraged so that the city can continue to promote a safe and healthy environment and stewardship. Progress in sustainability was mentioned during the July 6, 2020 City Council meeting when staff provided a general update to Council on the progress of the city's overall strategic plan. While reviewing the 2035 Vision Topic 6, Wheat Ridge is committed to environmental stewardship, it was noted that all of the goals related to sustainability had been completed by 2018. Council at that time expressed interest in establishing new strategies and requested that staff present strategies ahead of the February 2021 strategic planning retreat. First, we want to thank you, Council, for continuing to support our efforts towards a more sustainable and resilient community and environment. The next section of our presentation consists of our proposed sustainability strategies for Council's strategic plan update. The presentation tonight is informational, and we are not asking Council to decide on strategies, only to consider the options we are providing. If Council would like to move forward with any of these proposed strategies, staff will be able to provide you with additional information in the future. The proposed strategies were drafted based upon the review of current progress on the Sustainable Wheat Ridge Action Plan, conversations with city staff departments such as Community Development and Parks and Recreation, results from the Let's Talk Neighborhood Engagement Program, discussions with Sustainable Wheat Ridge, city social media channels, the feedback from community members with the resident survey and on the What's Up Wheat Ridge community engagement platform, the Sustainable Neighborhoods Program, and framework from peers in the region. If adopted, all proposed strategies would require additional staff time. These strategies are not presented in any specific order, and we believe that all 5 of our proposed strategies are important to consider. As Joy mentioned earlier in our presentation, 51% of the action plan is either in progress or already completed. Staff believes that there's value in planning for an update to the action plan, which would include new and updated goals. We are currently completing our first ever citywide greenhouse gas inventory with ICLEI, which is Local Governments for Sustainability. Once complete, these baseline measurements can be used to formulate data-driven carbon emission reduction strategies, which could be included in an updated action plan. There are also goals in the plan that reference groups that are now outdated and dates that are not in alignment with our current progress so far. So an update to the plan could meet the needs of 2021 and beyond. There are also various policy-related goals in the plan that would require many stakeholders to accomplish, such as the Idaho Stop example that Joy mentioned earlier in the presentation. An update to the plan could provide more broad guidance for staff and for the city moving forward. The committee developed the plan on its own in 2017 as resident subject matter experts, and staff believes that there is an opportunity to revitalize the action plan through a more comprehensive city and community-driven process. As Joy showed us earlier in the action plan progress table, policy-related goals make up 38% of the total action plan and 76% of the remaining action plan goals, and could be addressed should City Council provide that direction. When setting energy efficiency and renewable energy goals, there are programs that already exist that could support the city in this endeavor. We currently have an opportunity to join the Energy Futures collaboration with Xcel Energy, which would be adding to neighboring cities such as Denver, Lakewood, Louisville, and Westminster. This unique program, offered to graduates of the Partners in Energy program, brings city leadership together with Xcel Energy to set short and long-term goals and to create an energy plan that supports our city's energy goals. Joining this program would require an elected official appointee to work with the sustainability coordinator and Xcel Energy to strategize energy goals and attend quarterly meetings. Participation in this program would not require additional funding. There is also momentum for a regional collaboration towards energy efficiency and renewable energy goals with surrounding cities and counties that participate in programs with Xcel Energy. Since starting in this role, I've been building relationships with my sustainability colleagues in the region, and our surrounding municipalities are eager to work with us to align on sustainability goals. There are many recommendations in the action plan in the renewable energy topic area that reference regional collaboration and Xcel Energy partnerships. This strategy would address 4 major goals of the renewable energy topic area. A majority of the goals not yet in motion in the solid waste and recycling section of the action plan are related to policy changes and the pursuit of stricter operational guidelines for waste hauling companies that operate in Wheat Ridge, including stricter requirements for future providers or municipalization of waste services, with the goal of decreasing the waste hauler traffic on Wheat Ridge streets, increasing safety for residents, decreasing air pollution, and reducing carbon emissions. Organized waste hauling is a topic being addressed by many neighboring cities in Jefferson County, such as Golden, Arvada, and Lakewood. Both of our sustainable neighborhoods in Wheat Ridge view waste hauling as a very important issue to address with the program, and both are utilizing innovative strategies to address the topic that they see as a problem in their neighborhoods. Applewood Village's sustainable neighborhood, consisting of 468 residences from 32nd to 38th and Wright to Sim Street, outlined a single neighborhood trash hauler in their top 2 ranked priorities after their first neighborhood interest survey had been conducted through the program. Taking this direction, the leadership team created a waste hauler matrix outlining the pricing structure and major features of the top waste hauling companies in the region. Then they created and organized a waste hauling survey that was sent out to all of the homes in their neighborhood with the goal of measuring neighbors' most valued features of a waste hauler, such as cost, contract structure, and sustainability commitment. The neighbors are planning to use the results from the neighborhood survey to select a waste hauler and begin to register neighbors in March of this year. This story is a great example of the innovative ways the Sustainable Neighborhoods program and the neighborhood leaders are solving large-scale issues on a neighborhood level, taking problems and solutions into their own hands, giving voices to their neighbors, and implementing projects in Wheat Ridge that can provide a pilot study and potential framework for larger-scale implementation in the future. Furthermore, trash services was a frequently mentioned topic in the Let's Talk neighborhood engagement program in both East Wheat Ridge and Bel Air. In East Wheat Ridge, trash service was mentioned 21 times and was noted in all 5 small group sessions as an issue that needs to be addressed in the city. In Bel Air, trash service was mentioned 4 times and was a topic area of interest in all 6 small group sessions. While the topic tends to be controversial regionally, there is momentum in the Wheat Ridge community for a larger discussion on potential options to address organized waste hauling. There's also current mobilization on a state level towards stronger climate policy through the governor's recently published Greenhouse Gas Pollution Reduction Roadmap, which outlines the steps the state of Colorado will take to reach its ambitious goal of an 80% reduction in greenhouse gas pollution by 2030. Additionally, there's momentum regionally to collaborate and support policies that pave the path for cities to stay on par with the state outlined goals. The Colorado Communities for Climate Action is a coalition of 36 local governments across the state advocating for strong state and federal climate policy. The coalition represents 1/7 of the state's population and includes neighboring communities such as Edgewater, Golden, Westminster, and Broomfield. Joining the collective would require a resolution from council, annual dues payment, and a representative from the city to join the board of directors. This group would allow the city to support environmental policy at a broader level with limited staff capacity. Additionally, the House of Representatives Bill 763, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, is a bill intended to encourage market-driven innovation of clean energy technology through a carbon fee. Council requested that staff present information on this bill in the fall of 2020. However, it was decided that this effort should resume when the new Congress takes effect and reintroduces the bill in 2021. In recent discussions with staff regarding the action plan progress, it was noted that there's a potential need for a review of current city ordinances and codes that can expand the emphasis on sustainability. Certain citywide certifications, such as the B City certification that regional partners like Westminster and Fort Collins hold, requires an incorporation of pollinator-conscious practices into city policies and plans. To expand resident access to urban agriculture, as outlined in the 2035 vision, additional ordinances and codes may benefit from review. Current municipal code ordinances regarding alternative transportation infrastructure and lighting could also be reviewed and updated to include current technologies. Additionally, staff has reviewed information from the Let's Talk resident engagement program that suggests an expansion of the city's tree preservation ordinance may be an effective short-term strategy. Review of existing city ordinances would require collaboration with city departments, and if council provides us with direction on this strategy, staff can work with the subject matter experts to bring more information in the future. Thank you, Council, for inviting us to your meeting tonight to share with you the progress that's been made on the Sustainable Wheat Ridge Action Plan and proposed strategies for the Council Strategic Planning Retreat. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have tonight, and we're able to provide more information on any of the outlined strategies should Council provide us with that direction either tonight or in the future. We hope that this presentation has been helpful for your strategic planning process. And now Joy Up and Amy DePere will join me for any questions or comments you may want to share. We'll also be joined by Marianne Schilling, Assistant to the City Manager. Thank you again for your time tonight, and we look forward to your feedback.
Well, Ms. Betzel, thank you very much for a great presentation. A lot of great information there, and a lot of great work being done by the committee. So thank you all very much. We'll start our questions with Ms. Hoppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, thank you so much to Sustainable Wheat Ridge. You guys have just done so much with so little over the years, and I'm so super excited. I like all of the strategies. I would like to see us move them forward. I understand that there is a need for some additional funding, and so here we are in a year that we've already approved a budget, in a year where we cut a lot out of our budget. But we do have a wish list that we can add, that we're hoping to maybe be able to add back into our budget at the end of the year, for if we have if we have opportunities through grants and stuff like that, then we could maybe find some funding there. But I would like to say that I really support you guys moving forward. I'm not sure how we get it in the budget, and maybe Mr. Goff can discuss that a little bit about how that would work. And then my next question is for the CC4CA. You said that there would be dues, and I'm just wondering how much those dues were.
Yeah, so it's based on the population of our city, and with our population, it's around 3,000, but they do offer a grant program for that as well. And so I've spoken with them on that, and they said that, you know, we could definitely apply for their grant program to cover, you know, I think up to 50% of the cost.
That's great news. I'm just so excited. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you, Ms. Hulteen, and then Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to echo Councilmember Hoppy. I am just always amazed with how much this committee and Kayla can accomplish on behalf of our city. It's really extraordinary. And I just want to, in particular, recognize Kayla right now. I've been on a lot of conference calls with her in the last week. She's working on some grant work, and just brings a lot of great behind the scenes work. So thank you, Kayla, for all your work. It's hard to believe you're part-time. And on that note, I just grabbed the city budget. Thank you, Allie, for my budget binder. And I was looking at the 5-year staffing plan, and I noticed in the budget that we have in 2020, I do see 1/2 FTE for sustainability coordinator. Patrick, can you clarify, is that to increase to full-time, or is that actually Kayla's half-time position that's mentioned there?
I'm sorry, no, Ms. Holstein, I don't have it in front of me. Did you say, what year did you say?
It says in 2022.
Oh, yeah,
which,
that would be in addition to the current. That would
Okay.
take a full-time position.
Okay, all right. Well, I think
Just a
I mean,
recommendation. That's not binding. City council hasn't approved that or anything.
okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that that's something was being looked at. The opportunities that are ahead of us, I think, are pretty enormous, and it really takes a full-time coordinator to do that. So I want to make sure that that is part of this conversation, because if we're looking at expanding these programs, I think it's just really important that we have capable staff that's dedicated to it, and the value that comes back to our city is twofold, if not infinite, with the contributions to the sustainability in the city. My only question that I have out of this, there's a lot of good data that you have from starting the Sustainable Neighborhood program with the 2 existing neighborhoods, and I know you guys are looking at onboarding a couple more neighborhoods. When will you have more data from the 2 neighborhoods that are in process? I know that they earn a certain number of points throughout the year, and I think that type of information is really helpful for us when we're looking at what's the climate in our community for supporting different initiatives, and once they actually hit the rubber to the road. So when will you have more feedback on the 2 neighborhoods? And then the second question, with the new neighborhoods coming on, when will you expect to have data from their initial surveys?
So we have, Applewood Villages has conducted their first kind of baseline neighborhood interest survey. And from that data, they have identified their major priorities, which they're moving forward on now. So they are, doing a few different events. They're doing an e-waste recycling event. They're doing a composting event. We have a paint recycling event scheduled, and then the organized waste hauling initiative that they're moving forward with. They have expanded their neighborhood. Like I said, it's 468 homes now. And so they decided it would be beneficial to expand the reach of the engagement survey. And so there's a second survey that's been sent out. So they'll have data on that within the next month. And that will include the data from the organized waste hauling survey as well. So there's 2 surveys that were included in that. The other neighborhood is in the process of conducting their resident interest survey right now. So we should have data on that coming up pretty soon. Our two new neighborhoods will be coming on board in April, and so we'll kind of be relaunching the program for those 2 neighborhoods. So we should start seeing data as far as the interest of those neighborhoods go in the summertime. But you can see the live kind of live updates from the program on the Sustainable Neighborhood Network website, which is sustainableneighborhoodnetwork.org/Wheatridge. And then we have neighborhood pages for both Applewood Villages and Paramount Heights. You can see all of their projects that they've proposed so far, and then all of their credits. So one of the neighborhoods is about 1/3 of the way there already, and the other neighborhood, I think, has 20 out of their 100 points. So they're both doing great work so far.
Great. Well, thank you for all you do, and thanks for this thorough update. I'm looking forward to discussing it more with my peers in a few weeks. Thanks, Kayla.
Thank you, Mr. Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you explain again the nexus between the Idaho Stop and the Sustainability Committee?
So the Idaho Stop is one of the recommendations that's outlined in the current Sustainable Wheat Ridge Action Plan. It's under the transportation section. It is an ordinance that has not been adopted yet, but would require a resolution from council and an update on the policy side of things to move forward with. The Idaho stop is an ordinance that does not require a bicycle to stop at an intersection if they've determined that the conditions are safe around them. So it's something that that was added to the action plan when it was created in 2017.
But how does that make us more sustainable? What's the nexus between a bicyclist stopping or not and our environment or the sustainability of Wheat Ridge?
It just kind of brings together, I think, the alternative transportation with the bicyclists and kind of promotes alternative transportation methods and kind of advocates for different forms of alternative transportation. So it was something that was determined to be part of the action plan when it was originally created.
Thank you.
Does anyone from the original the committee that wrote the original plan have anything to add on that part?
I can just say one thing. I know that as far as the Idaho stop goes, it's to encourage people for alternative transportation, and then it has also been shown to be safer for the riders as well if they're able to move through in that way. So it's just encouraging alternative transportation and looking out for safety as well.
Thank you. Ms. Hulteen, and then Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I just wanted to add a couple things about the Idaho stop. So I actually worked with Bicycle Colorado when that was passed by the state, and it's an opt-in. It's a law that allows local jurisdictions to opt in. And one of the benefits of opting into it is it just allows more uniformity regionally about how bicyclists travel. And as we know, we have a lot of cyclists who travel through Wheat Ridge, to Wheat Ridge. So one of the advantages is it just creates a more uniform cycling environment that creates less confusion and conflict. It's generally recognized as safer, and there's a lot more data around that. With it definitely comes some education and outreach, which I think would be an important communication piece to look at with that. So anyway, definitely support it, and I like to see that that's something we're talking about. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering about this Idaho stop. Does that also include going through red lights?
No, it does not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, additional questions or comments from Ms. Weaver?
Like a couple of the other members, and been very supportive of the Sustainability Committee, and I would like to see it expand when we are able. It is probably the most the committee I hear the most about from constituents, and so I think it's a very popular thing in Wheat Ridge, and I think people are really appreciative of what the Sustainability Committee has been doing for the last couple of years. So thank you both, all three of you very much, and I just wanted to say how much it's appreciated.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions from council? Great presentation by all of you, and great to have you here. It's your committee. I echo what Ms. Weaver and others have said. You guys do a great job in our community, really heightening the way that we can sort of live together appropriately, if you will, on a long-term basis. So thank you very much for bringing all these things forward. Do we have any other comments before we move on? Do we need to make any recommendations, or you've made a lot of them? We need to study these. A lot of good information in the packet, more than I could just thumb through. But the original report was really a piece of work, in and of itself. And it's great to be that we're over 50% done with it. It's really a credit to the folks in our community. So. Thank you all very much for coming tonight. Mr. Goff.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mr. Mayor, that we will provide this this presentation for City Council. We're putting together a binder for the council retreat on February 20th. So we'll make sure you all have a copy of this so that you can you can have it in front of you when we're talking about priorities.
Great, and really a great priority to have in our city. So thank you all very much for your work. Thank you for joining us tonight, and a very great presentation. So we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, we're at an hour and a half. We've got one more item to go. Does anyone need a break of any kind? Ms. Hobby?
I was just wondering if maybe we could just take maybe a quick five-minute break.
Yeah, why don't we take it just, it's 9 o'clock. Let's come back before 10 after and we'll get going again. Just take a quick recess. Well, let's, I think we're all back. Thank you very much. Okay, we are on agenda, then let's go to agenda item number 3. That is our discussion on our liquor occupation tax and the liquor licensing fees. Mr. Goff.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city clerk's office manages our liquor licensing, and they had asked city council if they wanted to consider potential rebates or reduction of fees because of the COVID impacts on our small businesses. And Councilmember Stites and Urban sponsored that to put it on a study session agenda. And we're here tonight to have a discussion about that. And our city clerk, Steve Kirkpatrick, has a presentation ready for you.
Can you see my PowerPoint slide?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. What we're really trying to do here is specifically narrowly target relief of the liquor license fees and liquor occupation tax for businesses that have been licensed to sell liquor for on-premises consumption. In other words, bars, restaurants, taverns. We are specifically not talking about helping businesses that sell liquor in packages, liquor stores, because as we all know, their business has not only not suffered during the pandemic, it has dramatically increased across the country. Just so we're all on the same page, we collect about $18,000 in liquor license fees every year. There is a fee attached to essentially any transaction involving a liquor license, whether it's an application for a new one, a renewal. When a licensee wants to expand their outdoor dining area, as we have seen in many cases, they have to put in a modification of premises application, because a liquor license is not just a building, it is a specific footprint in and around the building. The other thing we collect is a tax for the privilege of operating a liquor-related business. It's common across the country and certainly across Colorado. Those amount to about $70,000 a year. You have in your packet detailed descriptions of what those fees are charged for and what the occupational tax looks like. We're talking about locally owned businesses serving alcoholic beverages for on-premise consumption that have seen significant revenue drops in the last year. We are specifically wanting to exclude chain stores and restaurants. So for instance, since Uncle Julio's is a chain restaurant store, we would not include them in this particular program. Nor would we include supermarkets that have either fermented malt beverage licenses, because the supermarkets, as we all know, thank God for the city of Wheat Ridge, provide an amazing flow of sales taxes, and their business has done very well in the last year. What we're looking at is businesses that have either have seen a significant drop in revenue, not just a minimal or small drop in revenue. We also do not want to give this break to businesses that are not in good standing with the city or with the liquor enforcement code. We have a couple of those in the city now that have been the subject of public hearings for liquor law violations and are scheduled to have more hearings about additional violations. I'm happy to say it's not many, but we certainly don't want to help somebody who is afoul of the law already. A couple of options the council could consider is just blanket relief for all licensees. We would recommend that we target the relief program to the businesses I just described. Local, owned and operated businesses that sell liquor or fermented malt beverages for on-premises consumption. They have to be eligible in terms of being licensed by the city and have a current liquor license. By the way, we can't issue you a liquor license unless you already have a city business license. So this is my last slide. What I'm recommending to council is that you reach a consensus to ask the staff to come back with a simple, easy, transparent process where a business could apply for this relief much in the same way people applied for the business revitalization grants. We do not want to do this in a way that overburdens the finance staff at this time of the year, for the obvious reason that they've got year-end audits and 2 or 3 other major projects they're working on. So in other words, we don't want to suggest that we should be issuing checks as refunds. What we want to do is set a 12-month period starting, and I picked April 1st as an example. It could be any date you want. And for that 365 days, from that date until the next year on the day before, if your liquor license fee is due, you are forgiven that. If your occupational tax is due for covering that, some part of that period or all of it, then you wouldn't have to pay that occupation tax. You'd have to be a business in good standing experiencing a significant revenue drop. Now, what is significant is going to be the first question. If we look at the data on the sales tax receipts that we have gotten, we will be very quickly able to sort those on-premises consumption restaurants, bars, taverns into groups that look like they're hurting badly or they're just minimally impacted. Our belief is that most of them are hurting badly. There are exceptions because some of our restaurants and bars have seen massive increases in their revenue for one reason or another. Others have come to me and said, I don't know if I'm going to make it through the end of 2021. A number of them have said that to us, of course. We want to target only those locally owned and operated on-premises consumption businesses. That's all the presentation I have. What I'd like to do is get a consensus and then work closely with the administration director and our finance people and Mr. Goff to make sure that we can do this in a way that's efficient, transparent, easy for the businesses, and not overly burdensome to the staff. Questions from anyone?
Thank you, Kirkpatrick. And we'll open it up for questions from council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Hulteen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I spent some time with this afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. Your presentation, I think, kind of narrowed in on some of the same concerns I had when I was looking at this. I have a quick question for Mr. Goff. Can you refresh my memory? Does Hacienda Colorado, Uncle Julio's, did they get a TIF or some sort of financing package from the city?
They did, yes. They have a urban renewal TIF agreement, yes.
Okay. The reason I asked is I went through just now and kind of double checked. I'm very supportive of principally supporting our local businesses. In the materials that we were provided, when you're looking at on-site consumption, only 6 of those eligible businesses are actually corporate franchises or something, really that's not considered that much of a local business. And 4 of those are actually receiving they're on property receiving some sort of city financing. So I think their tax revenue generation is important to the city. So I'd like to move that we include them in consideration. It's only 6 of them, and they're being hit just like our local businesses, and the interest in keeping them in business and leverage to me is worth considering. But otherwise, I'd like the criteria that Mr. Kirkpatrick has proposed. It seems to kind of align with where the need is, and I appreciate that additional information. Thanks.
Thank you. Additional comments from council. Ms. Dozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering what the general need is in the community, if there's been any outreach or discussion with the business community about how much this would hurt them or help them. Was there any initial data on that?
I can tell you that the total that a business might realize from this relief would vary from a few $100s, a little less than $1,000, up to as much as $2,000. So it could be a quarter or half, again, as much as the business revitalization grants provided to them. I don't know that we're going to save any businesses with that amount of money, but I think it's worth the risk to do it because, as you've said, the revenue stream from sales taxes going forward is huge. So this is really a thinking long-term proposal. Did that help at all?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Stites.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick, and to your deputy, Robert Eaton, or Robin Eaton was the person who brought this up in the first place. I think that I think it's a great idea. I do have a question about the implementation and if this is something that we send to the liquor authority to make the determinations. Is it something we send back to the grant proposal? Is it who makes these determinations? And then we were talking about significant revenue decrease. Do we need to put a specific percentage on that, or is that something that we can move forward with just kind of eyeballing it, or kind of making those determinations as we go?
I think the specific percentage is going to make it much easier for a business to apply because we have to tell them in the application. You have to be able to show us a reduction in your revenue based on sales taxes of X percent. Now, I don't know whether the right number is 25% or 33% or 61%. I believe when we get back into the numbers and look hard at the data, the people who need it most will leap out at us. There may be a few on the cusp, and we'll just bring back to council what we found and let you make a determination as to what percentage. But I think we have to be very specific about, if your sales tax revenue has fallen by this much, we assume your receipts have fallen by, a proportionate amount, and there you go. As to whether or not the liquor authority needs to do this, one of the things about implementation that we have to do is sit down with Mr. Dahl and Mr. Rivera and look at the wording in the statutes. The liquor code in Colorado, I would liken it to the Internal Revenue Code. It goes on for literally hundreds of pages, and the details are just impossible to remember until you look them up every time. So we need to sit with the lawyers and ask the question, for instance, can we relieve the entirety of the liquor occupation tax, or does the law require us only to relieve a part of it? The same with the license fees. We think we have a lot of latitude, but it's not clear to us at this point whether or not the Liquor Authority Board would have to vote on that, or whether council could take the action in addition to or instead of the Liquor Authority Board. So those are the details we want to look into in terms of implementation. At this point, we're hoping to get a consensus to move forward with this so we can come back with those details. As to who would make the determination, we can either leave it to the clerk's office, or we can create a small panel of people like we use for the business grants, including one or more of you, to sit and go through them. However, I don't care how we do it. Doesn't matter, as long as it's clear and simple to the business.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Poppy. And then Ms. Nosler-Back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would like to see us move forward with this. And some of the things I'm thinking is that we don't do a blanket leave, but they do have to apply, that we do limit it to only on-premise sales. So that's not packaged, so that's not liquor stores, grocery stores. I like the suggestion of, April through March. And I think that if we line it out clear enough, like if we do say like a specific percentage, then I think that Mr. Kirkpatrick and Mr. Eaton could probably manage that through the city clerk's office without having to gather another group of people for it. One thing I would like to mention is when we're looking at the percentage, what seemed like a million years ago, I was a general manager for a restaurant bar for about 10 years. And I can tell you that a lot of where you make your money is in your liquor sales. And if your sales are down 20% and perhaps you're doing a lot of to-go food, but not necessarily don't have the liquor sales to go with it, it is significant. It doesn't seem significant, but it really is significant. You still have all your hard costs, your brick and mortar and staffing and stuff like that. And food costs the percentage of what you make on food is significantly lower than what you make on liquor. So I think that it's I appreciate all of the work that the city clerk's office has put into this to bring it forward to us, and I would like to see it move forward and as simply as possible.
Thank you. I have Ms. Nosler back and this Ms. Hulteen.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to jump in real quick and say that I agreed with what Council Member Hulteen mentioned in terms of not just isolating this to small businesses. I want to specifically, you know, if we do look at Julio's and their business, they're new to Wheat Ridge, and we don't even, I think, have the revenues to show what they did the year prior to compare it to. And so I want to make sure that we're not excluding anybody that probably needs the help there. So just wanted to jump on, and then I really agree with everything that you just proposed, Councilwoman Hoppy.
Thank you. And then Councilwoman Hulteen.
Thank you, Mayor Stucker. In light of what we're hearing about some of the potential issues that we might face in terms of what's allowable with the complexity of state liquor licensing and local, can we actually just treat this like a small business grant and make the requirements for the eligibility of the grant that you've paid your fees? Like, I mean, can we, because we're looking at reducing potential revenue to the city, and some of it's been paid, but like, can we just skip all of the legality issues and just create a really targeted grant program that is strictly just eligible using the criteria set forth by the clerk?
My answer to that question would be, I'm totally in favor of avoiding the liquor law if we can. The question remains, can we? And if we can, certainly we can go that route.
I mean,
Sure.
I think that, okay, I mean, I realize that there's delicacies everywhere, but we're also really targeting a very specific business. And our other businesses going to be like, well, why aren't we getting, eligibility for this? I realize that that's kind of the slippery slope of the grant program, but I mean, we could go through all this and find we're in a really sticky mess and unable to execute it the way we want to, whereas the grant program would make it a lot cleaner. So if that's something we think we could do, I think it sounds like it's a lot cleaner if it's doable.
We will absolutely look at that.
Do you have some advice on that matter?
Yeah, a couple of things. The liquor licensing laws, the state liquor licensing laws really don't come into play here. Neither does the city's liquor authority. Those laws and that authority grant, deny, suspend, revoke liquor licenses the right to sell alcohol. What's being discussed here is whether and to what extent the city should share revenue that it receives with targeted businesses. And in that context, seen in that way, it's much like Ms. Hulteen is saying. In that context and seen that way, liquor businesses are not different or special than any other category of business that you decide is particularly affected in one way or another by the pandemic. Liquor licensed businesses do generate revenue from the city, for the city, in a couple of different ways. But that revenue is not spent or governed in any way by the liquor authority. Neither is it spent or governed by the liquor licensing laws. So I'm taking too long to say I think that you're freed from that structure if your goal is to move city money into the hands of targeted businesses that have certain eligibility criteria that you'll develop. If you direct the staff to develop some eligibility criteria for liquor businesses, you have some freedom to do that. You're not constrained by the fact they happen to be liquor licensed businesses particularly.
That's excellent news. And does anyone know of another class of business that pays that level of occupational tax and license fee?
Pawn shops pay a pretty high
I'm sorry?
license fee. Pawn shops pay a pretty high license fee, but I guess I'd say that the size of the fee, while might be helpful for the council to consider what the size of the relief should be, doesn't make them legally unique. You know, nothing I'm saying here gets in the way of you having a program. I'm just saying that the fact that you get more revenue necessarily from liquor license businesses is kind of neutral in terms of how you want to go about choosing to assist those businesses with city money once that money is received.
I would also argue that this class of businesses, the locally owned on-premises consumption liquor licensees, are demonstrably damaged in a lot of specific cases by the pandemic. Whereas I doubt the pawn shops have suffered as much. I don't know. I haven't seen the data. But in my intuition tells me that they've probably done more business in the last year than usual. Who knows?
It's quite possible. The pawn shop is just an example about high fees, low fees, but relevant to whether you have an industry that's needing city assistance, and if so, kind of what form should that take and how much?
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Oh, wait, can I just close out my comment? So thank you, Mr. Dahl, for that. And if we were categorically giving relief without looking at this application or qualifications, I don't think the grant would be a good alternative. But since we are looking at asking people to apply for it and it's got specific qualifications, even within the categories, a grant process may be actually a little bit cleaner for us. So thank you.
Ms. Hoppy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilwoman Hulteen, for your comments. I would have to disagree. I think that a liquor licensing fee waiver would probably be a cleaner way to go for this specific thing because of how specific it is, and also because it sets the tone. If I'm a retailer, then I know that I don't pay a liquor licensing fee, and that is specifically what we're looking at waiving is liquor licensing fees. And so I think that it would help with the communication about like what we are doing and specifically why we're doing it and why it's for on-premise liquor sales. One thing I wonder is if maybe, because in the packet with the information, there's a lot of information in there. The suggestions tonight, though, really narrowed down more of kind of what was in the packet, which were kind of the things that I was thinking about. I wonder if we give some direction to move forward, but to another study session. So if we can maybe whittle it down a little bit tonight and then ask, here's the direction for the city clerk's office, and then they can come back to another study session and say, this is what I heard, and here's more clarification. And then if we have an opportunity to then spend some time speaking with some of the local restaurant businesses, and just maybe if they come up with something else, then maybe we can discuss any changes later. And so I was just wondering if how people would feel about that.
Are you looking sort of for consensus on that idea to
yeah, I guess I was looking for maybe discussion if necessary, but I think maybe I will just try for, maybe you're right, Mr. Mayor. Maybe I'll just try for a consensus to ask the city clerk's office to move forward with their plan for a liquor licensing fee waiver that will be applied for those who can apply are on-premise liquor sales people, and that they would apply to the clerk's office, that the clerk's office would manage it, and that the need plateau that they would have to demonstrate is that their business would have to be 20% reduced. And in cases where some people really just started when the pandemic started, I think they could probably show, I'm sure they had a business plan and they had some plans on what their projections were. And so they could utilize projections rather than actual sales. And that they look initially at April 2021 through March 2022, and then bring that back to another study session. Very long consensus, sorry.
Okay, but let's see if you agree with that. Do we have consensus on that as a path to move forward? If we do, raise your hand. Looks like we have consensus on a path to move forward there. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question, or I guess express a concern about that? So we have a lot, according to the spreadsheet that was provided, we have a lot of businesses who have not paid yet. It looks like, and maybe some of that's been updated, but my understanding is that businesses that don't pay within 90 days of when this is due, and I could, like, there's a lot of information, so if I'm not getting this right, please correct me, anybody, but that they incur additional, like, pretty significant fines and fees. So if there are businesses out there that are depending on this program in order to make good on being able to pay within 90 days, then we're putting them in a squeeze. We're going to actually make it more expensive for them. So I may be misinterpreting that, but if that's the case, then I think given that our next study session isn't until March, I believe, we might be in a position where we're going to have a hard time implementing this without creating that squeeze. So if anyone knows this better than I, please correct me on that. But if we're going to do this, I don't want to do it and then actually be putting businesses in a position where they have to pay additional money.
The state has passed the statute, and I'll have to go back and look at the specifics, but they have relieved people of those late payment fees or license renewal late fees and so forth at the state level. I see no reason why we wouldn't do the same thing at the local level, just for this one time period, not permanent. That's an excellent question. And we have about 75 liquor licenses at any given time in Wheat Ridge. It varies because, of course, businesses close and new applications come in, et cetera. But we can track very quickly. Robin could tell me rather quickly how many of them are late. I know that the mayor and I recently signed liquor licenses last week for businesses whose licenses had expired in November and December, but they were covered by the state law. There's an extension of that currently. So we could just follow that same rule. But I agree with you. We have to look at that because you're right. We don't want to forgive with one hand and take it back with the other.
Okay, well, it sounds like it's given what the state's doing and our ability to exercise some forgiveness with that, then I fully support the consensus. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there additional discussion on this item? Ms. Hoppy?
I just would like to put that as I look at the schedule, we could have time for this on the March 1st study session because as Councilwoman Hulteen pointed out, this is our last study session for the month of February.
We will be prepared on March 1st.
Thank you. Any further discussion on agenda item number 3 before we move on?
Thank you all very much for your time and for considering this.
Thank you very much for bringing this forward. Okay, we will go to staff reports. Mr. Goff.
Let me get off my mute off here. I need to find my document here. Well, I'll just do it off the top of my head. Talking about business grant programs, the county, Jefferson County currently has a business grant program, and we have I believe 28 businesses now that have applied for that, but they did just extend that deadline until February 8th, I believe. So if let your any Wheat Ridge businesses know, we did send letters and emails out when this grant opportunity first came available. So all of our businesses should know about it, but they did extend the deadline to February 8th. And I think that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Goff. With that, we will go to elected officials matters. If you have a matter for us tonight, raise your hand and we'll go with Mr. Stites first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to remind everybody that Councilwoman Weaver and I have our District 3 meeting on Saturday morning at 9:30. It's at the Rec Center. It's also on Zoom. So if you check either my Facebook page or pretty much any of the Wheat Ridge pages or the Wheat Ridge city government page, the link is all out there as well. So you can tune in via Zoom at 9:30 on Saturday. We will have Jeff Hurt from the planning department there to talk a little bit about what's going on with the neighborhood development program or the neighborhood revitalization program, and answer a lot of any questions that District 3 residents have about some of the planning process going on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional elected officials matters. Ms. Soltine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two things. So last year I was fortunate enough to be able to host a District 2 potluck, and obviously can't do that this year. So as an alternative, inspired by the District 3 Council people, I'm going to hold a limited in-person annual update at the Rec Center on the 16th of February from 1 to 2:30. And that's limited to 20 people in person. And then I'm going to present the same content via Zoom on Tuesday, the 16th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. And all that information will be posted on the city website. So I hope people can come. I'll be giving highlights from last year. I don't know if you can call them highlights, but I will be reading out last year and talking about priorities in the upcoming year. I've got Good Neighbor Awards to give out, and we're going to be featuring some historical storytelling, as well as a community artist who's making national news. So I hope people can join me for that, District 2. And then my second thing is really more of a question maybe for, maybe Patrick, maybe Allie. When we put out our agendas for both council meetings and for study session, we use the terminology citizen right to speak and citizen comment on agenda items. I'd like us to consider, and I don't know what's involved with updating that to public comment. That is the terminology used by all of our surrounding communities, and I think is more inclusive if we're trying to hear from people in our community. Using citizen right to speak might be confusing for businesses, people who don't have their citizenship, or residents outside of our community that we want to hear from. So I don't know what's involved in that, but it's something I came across this afternoon and would love for us to take a look at revising, replacing citizen with just public comment.
The agenda format is specific in our city council rules, so we could amend the city council rules to change that, and that would have to come back to council for an amendment.
Perhaps we talk about that at our strategic planning session.
Could do that too.
All right. All right. Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional public elected officials, excuse me. Ms. Dosman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Nasser Beck and I have been reached out by some businesses recently, and we would like to bring forth a study session agenda item on the noise ordinance, and specifically discussing the number of permits a business can hold for amplified sound per 12 months. I don't know if Ms. Nasserbeck has anything else to add, but if we could maybe get that onto a study session here in the near future, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. We'll, our Mayor Pro Tem and staff are hearing those words and getting that on the agenda. Thank you for bringing that forward, Ms. Dosman.
Janice will follow up with an email with some more details on what that can look like.
Thank you. You read my mind.
Thank you. Additional elected officials matters. Anything more to come before the good of the order? I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight, and our presenters from Rocky Mountain Bottle Company for coming and talking with us, and particularly our speakers from Sustainable Wheat Ridge for coming and giving a great presentation to us. We've got a lot going on in our city. Great place to be. So thank you all for being here. We will not be next week is President's Day, so we will not have a next meeting. Our next meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, but should be a business meeting on February 22nd. Do I have that right?
February 8th. Boy, you're jumping ahead.
Wow, am I jumping ahead here? Oh, I was hopeful. I was looking for.
February 8th is our next.
Okay, so it's only the first of February, bud. Okay, so we'll be here next week, February 8th, for a meeting, 7 o'clock. Thank you all for being here. School is either in session or kids are out about on the street because we've got nice weather. Please be careful as you drive out there. As always, take care of your personal safety and those of the members of our community. So thank you all for joining us. With that, we will adjourn our meeting and say good night.